Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to give you 3 steps to help monetize your data, the things that you need to consider, questions you need to ask yourself whilst evaluating and looking at your data assets you have available today. My customers are getting very excited about data monetization since Snowflake came along. It's introduced a feature called Data Marketplace, which allows for frictionless sharing between consumers and providers. If you stay till the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit more around that. And really, it's no surprise that your customers and business partners are really keen to get data from you. It can help some customers improve customer experience, build new products, identify and create new revenue streams, as well as uncovering new market opportunities, amongst a host of other use cases. And don't forget guys, if you get good value from this channel, please like and subscribe. New videos coming soon. I think there are 3 primary steps to monetizing your data. The first one is discover, so identifying and cataloging the data assets you have available today. Defining a market strategy and how you're going to price your data sets when you do take them to market. And then finally sharing your data. So how will you share it? There's a number of options available. We'll discuss those if you stay to the end of the video, and we'll have a look at various case studies as well. So step 1 is discovering what data assets you have today. This is all about creating an inventory of high value data assets. Now, as counterintuitive as it sounds, I find it really helpful to start with what you can't share. And so that might be the information that would disclose trade secrets, risk competitiveness in the marketplace, breach legal legislation. And it's often helpful if you have a data classification across your organization, apply that and overlay that to your data assets to work out firstly what's not even worth considering, because that often spreading the net wide initially and going through every data set takes a huge amount of time, and you don't want to go through all that pain and effort to find out you cannot share that data set because there's some kind of restriction against it. So the easiest thing to do first, understand what you can't share, and then work out from what you can share what is going to be valuable. And typically that leaves a wealth of possible other options, and that may include data such as sensor, telemetry, weather or log data. I've used telemetry data in the past where we had GPS boxes hardwired into cars, and I was working for an insurer of these vehicles at the time. We were able to look at things like driver behavior, how fast they were driving around certain corners, if they were breaking the speed limit. And that allowed us then to look into opportunities around usage-based pricing based upon driver behavior to be more competitive in the market, specifically for younger drivers. Things like weather as well, they help companies forecast sales, make sure they've got the right stock in, depending if it's going to be a particular weather event coming. They know what kind of thing flies off the shelves when there's a certain weather event announced on TV. It can also help logistical companies and people managing supply chains adjust transportation routes and make decisions based upon that. So there's a lot of value of that in the marketplace. Other data sets that may be useful to your competitors or customers, sharing commercial data such as share dealing, price movements in the market, or any market insights. If somebody's made an acquisition recently or looking to sell their company or merge with another one, that obviously all has an impact. Also, you've got marketing data such as customer buying trends or patterns and segmentation, and media companies and advertisers are able to now share data using a concept known as data clean rooms, where they're not actually exposing any individual customer information, but they're able to share demographics and trends and buying behavior to help retailers, for example, really personalize their messaging specific to their target market. So now you've defined your inventory of high value data assets that you can actually share. What do you do next? So my next recommendation would be to look at how you could increase the value of those data assets that you've just cataloged and found. Now, starting with the raw data, let's assume that you've just got data in its raw format, and you could obviously decide to share that if you thought there was value in that. However, it's well worth looking at how potentially you could add additional value to that raw data to make it more attractive to customers and therefore charge more money on the marketplace for it. So you could actually clean the data. So if the data was coming through in a format which needed cleaning and standardizing, you could add value in that way. So then when your data consumers get that data, they don't need to do the work themselves. Additionally, you could curate that data, you could join it with other data sets that you have available, apply any particular business logic that's going to be useful, and combine it with existing data sets, and cleaning it as well as applying business logic in a consistent manner will also make that data potentially more attractive to your data consumers. Finally, you might want to derive new insights from the data. So you may want to use some AI or ML techniques, or even create some dashboards, some BI dashboards over the top of the data to make it more accessible, and offer that to your customers as an option as well. Whatever you decide to choose, it's important that you consider how you could increase and elevate the value of the existing data that you've got. Some of these steps could be quite easy, some of them could be more complex depending on how far down the value chain that you want to go. So obviously raw data, that's going to be the lowest in terms of any time, complexity and effort on your part. And as you add value and go up the scale, you're obviously having to spend some additional time and effort. If you can automate those tasks and operationalize those processes, even better, because the more value you can earn from that, the more effective your monetization of data strategy is going to be. So that's step one, identifying your data assets, what you can share. Once you've got those high value ones, looking at how you potentially could increase the value of them. The next step is to define your target market, and that includes the pricing strategy as well. In this step, really defining a go-to-market strategy, which includes pricing, is an important factor here. So how do you actually land on a price? Well, you need to consider how much the data costs to produce. Now, this can include a number of factors depending on where that data initially resides and how you collect that data. Generally, though, there's going to be a cost associated and time associated with sourcing and onboarding that data. That may live in source systems. You may own them. They may be with a third-party provider. You need to get them in and onto your data platform then, so you can do some work with them to make them available to your customers. That work may involve cleaning or transforming, applying business logic, or augmenting the data with other existing data sets, whether that be internally or whether you're getting them from a third party to enhance your existing data sets. You also need to consider how much time and effort it takes to handle any operational issues, such as if you had corrupt data or missing data. Maybe some of your processes have failed overnight and you need to fix those and get them up and running again. And also, you've got to anticipate a level of customer queries. So if you're offering this data on the marketplace to your customers, as part of that service agreement, you may need to sign up to certain service level agreements that guarantees to your customers the data is going to be available in a certain format, in a certain way as they expect, by a certain time, either daily, weekly, monthly, whatever's agreed with that customer. There's going to be a cost to manage that service that you need to factor in and take into account. Additionally, you're working with data, you're going to need compute, storage, memory to do stuff with that data. So you also need to factor in infrastructure costs. That's probably going to be cloud infrastructure costs and any associated licensing costs that make up your data value supply chain. Now, one option in terms of a pricing model would be to simply add up all of these costs, add your margin on top, and that's the cost that you offer to the customer in terms of a price to get access to your data set. It's not the only option. There's another way which looks at value-based pricing, and that also involves several factors. And some of the key questions to consider here is, how hard would it be for your customers to source this data? Can they go somewhere else? Can they source it themselves? Or do they have to come to you to source it? Understanding the answer to that question is obviously pivotal to being able to understand how much you can charge. Another factor to consider is, do you need certain niche skills within your team to work on the data, or any particular domain expertise to really make sense of the data and to derive and unlock new insights? Also consider how this data that you're preparing to share could help potential customers improve their business. So could they develop better products based upon the data that you're sharing? Could they make more sales, reach more prospects, or target customers more effectively with better, more appropriate personalized offers or messaging? Perhaps some of your customers are already dealing with the pain of collecting and managing the data that you're preparing to share operationally, and it's cost them a lot of time and effort, and they would rather consume it from somebody else as a data as a service model and just outsource that data sourcing completely. It's really important that you consider these questions ahead of time, because it's totally possible, and I've seen this before, to produce an incredibly costly data set which doesn't actually add value to anyone else. Ideally, you want to find a low-cost data set that provides biggest value add to your buyers? And all of these questions are designed to help you think about and consider what data is going to be the most effective one for you to monetize. Now you've thought about the cost of providing the data and the potential value on the market. The final element in step 2 around market strategy is what we refer to as packaging. And the key questions here to consider are things like how often you'll refresh your data and how important is this to your customers. For example, do your customers only care about data at the present time, such as stock prices and volatility, when they're making investment decisions? Because once that data is outdated, then it loses its value quite rapidly for those customers. But potentially historical insights are more valuable, such as historical house prices over time, or perhaps an insurance company that offers house insurance wants to analyze insurance claim events over time in certain streets within particular geographical areas to get a better sense of the market risk it's dealing with. The bottom line here is different customers will place different value on how often you refresh those particular data sets, so it's well worth considering. Also, how comprehensive will the data often be in terms of number of data points or level of aggregation? Now, this can really help in refining your pricing model, such as you could have some tiered pricing setup like gold, silver, and bronze. And in this case, bronze, for example, could have the narrowest amount of data points available at a real high level of aggregation. And as customers choose to pay more because they see value in the data, they get more data points and at a more granular level, giving them better insights and in turn more value to their operations. One other factor to consider if this is an option to you is considering exclusivity to a single customer in return for a premium payment. I've seen this setup before. It can work really well because you're just dealing with one particular customer. Therefore, you're reducing the operational overheads and potential queries in comparison to having hundreds or tens of customers. And sometimes a single customer wants to corner the market and capture that data for themselves and are prepared to pay more to be able to secure that data exclusively. So it's well worth considering upfront when you're considering your pricing model and how to package your data product. I mentioned a little bit earlier in the presentation, but with a suite of BI dashboards, such as something built in Power BI or Tableau or Looker, for example, pre-built, with all the filters in there, allowing your customers to slice and dice the data so they didn't have to do that work themselves, would that add further value to your customers? And would that complete your data offering and data product to the market? Now, finally, you can share your data with the world. We've discovered what data we can share and identify those high value data sets. We've potentially curated that data and cleansed it and added new additional insights to it. We've defined our target market and pricing strategy. The final step now is sharing that data and deciding how to distribute it to the market. Now, traditional data sharing methods come with certain downsides. Lots of companies offer file transfer via SFTP or Amazon S3, for example. And the downside here is you have to do all of the work. So you've got to extract the data from many different data sources, place it in a SFTP or Amazon S3 or another cloud provider's bucket location, and then your customer gets a bad experience because they've got to come in, extract that data, potentially do downstream activities such as cleansing or transforming that data as they load it into their data platform or data warehouse for further analysis. All of that takes time, has multiple points of failure. By the time your client gets that data, the data is already stale and outdated. An alternative around that was to develop APIs to allow a common set of access to customers to the same piece of data, but it also requires quite a lot of effort where the company developing the API has to put time and effort in to build it, and the consumer coming in to query that data via the API needs to understand that API and how to access it in a consistent way. There's still quite a degree of operational overhead. That code needs to be maintained over time. It needs to be kept updated. And again, there's an element of latency. Depending on the volume of data we're moving here, we're still physically moving data across networks. And that data movement leads to potential corruption in data, data loss, theft, latency I've mentioned, and the data becoming stale very quickly. However, there is another way to share data, and that's using Snowflake's Data Marketplace. Here, the data stays within the company and organization that owns the data, and it can be shared with no data movement to potentially an unlimited number of consumers. Your potential customers or your data consumers can access that data directly as soon as it's available using a Snowflake account. So this data appears into their Snowflake account. Once you've shared it with them, it appears like any other database within their account. There's no data movement, so as soon as you as the owner of the data refresh it, it becomes available directly to those data consumers. They can then easily and quickly consume that data using native SQL code as well as joining it with their own data. So the challenges involved with using APIs and SFTPs and shipping files around the network, along with the overhead and points of failure, all of that's gone now because data movement is eradicated from the entire process. Further than that, Snowflake can share cross-region, so multi-region, and cross-cloud. So if you're Snowflake customer wanting to share data and your Snowflake instance is running on Microsoft Azure, for example, your data consumers have Snowflake, but it's running on Google Cloud Services, then it really doesn't matter. It's still going to be the same user experience. It removes a lot of friction from traditional file sharing processes. The great thing is that Snowflake has a data marketplace in the background, which comes with the product, which allows you direct access to that, where you can push your data sets onto there, open them up and charge to access that data. That's all part of the Snowflake platform. It's all built into the service itself. I find like a lot of my customers are really excited about this. And let's have a quick look at what that looks like in Snowflake right now. So now we've headed across onto our Snowflake environment. We're going to click up here on Data Marketplace. And we're going to click Explore the Data Marketplace. As part of accessing Snowflake Data Marketplace, Snowflake will ask you to log into its next generation web UI. So this is the classic web UI that we started in. When we click through to Data Marketplace and click Explore, it takes us through to SnowSite, which is a next generation web UI. We're now within that application. And we've clicked on Marketplace on the left-hand side, and these are all our data sets available to us. You can see it's arranged by certain categories or industries, business needs, and individual providers as well. I'm going to go to a data set I'm familiar with just to show you the kind of things that are out there. If I just type in star schema, I then get access to this COVID-19 data set that they provide. If I click in there, you can see that this is completely free. It gives us a bit of detail about the COVID-19 data that's collected. Also, what's really handy is these usage examples that are provided as well with the SQL code that you can simply just copy and use against the data set to get you going. So it's got some various examples such as get the total case count of COVID cases by country, changes in mobility over time, and a couple of other examples as well. For now, I'm just going to click Get Data. You can see now that it's going to create a database, and you can actually name that database whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to call it COVID-19. I'm going to click Get Data, and I'm going to show you what happens at the moment. Because I'm logged in as sysadmin, it doesn't let me get that data unless I've got the role import share privilege assigned to me. What I'm going to do in this case, I'm just going to close this down. I'm going to switch over to the account admin role just for the purposes of this demo. And I'm going to click Get Data. Again, I'm going to call it COVID-19. I'm going to Get Data. Now what's this doing in the background is no data movement, as I mentioned earlier. This is creating access to that shared data set and making it available in my Snowflake account. I can now click Query Data, and then it opens up a query worksheet with those sample queries in there. And I can just quickly go in here and execute them. So if I run that first one there, which is the total number of cases by country, aggregated over time, I get a quick count of the cases by country. If I just go back into the classic web UI, I'll just switch back into the account admin because I didn't give anybody any other roles access to that. You can also choose the roles when you bring that data across. If I go into databases now in here, I can see I've got that COVID-19 database. It looks and behaves like this database, and tables and data is all sitting within my own Snowflake account. I can see all of the tables. And the great thing is, even looking at the size of these tables, which are fairly large, I just got to click one button, wait a couple of seconds, and I get instantaneous access to query all of this data. Imagine how long it would take if I needed to physically transfer this data and make it available, and then keep it up to date every day as well. So that's a very brief look at what the marketplace looks like and how you can get access to data in Snowflake. So this use case introduces State Street, who are a finance company, and how they use Snowflake and Snowflake's data sharing and data marketplace functionality to basically create a new product they call the Alpha Data Platform, which is built upon Snowflake. And State Street have data sets that help investment managers and investors make certain investment decisions, and they provide sort of market data, share prices, organizational information to help investors make those strategic decisions by bringing together data and analytics from across that investment lifecycle. Now, previously, State Street was on an Oracle data platform. It got to the point where it got extremely expensive. It got harder to produce value quickly. And obviously, in the investments domain, there's huge volumes of financial data. They typically reside in databases and are quite siloed. They needed to move away from that to a more scalable data architecture. And they need to make it easier for their clients to get access to that data in near real time and analyze time series data, which is just massively important to make investment decisions. The business model prior to adopting Snowflake for their Alpha Data Platform was to either produce files and send those to their data consumers, or their data consumers could come and grab those files and then move them into their own data sources. Or they could connect directly into a bespoke data mart, if you like, built upon the State Street side in Oracle, and an extract would be produced from there directly by the data consumer. But now expectations had changed in the market. They needed to provide up-to-date information far more quickly, more seamlessly, with less friction to their downstream clients. And that's where Snowflake came in, specifically Snowflake secure data sharing and data marketplace capabilities. And so moving on to the Alpha Data Platform on Snowflake removed a number of performance concerns, just with the scalability and compute power available in the cloud, as well as the usage-based pricing that Snowflake offered allowed State Street to offer their clients transparent pricing. So with their commercial deals with their clients, there'll be a number of credits their clients will purchase that'll be available for them to come in and consume some of the data off the Alpha platform as and when required. Obviously, when they reach that point, when their credits expire, then it's an easier conversation to have then, because it's all transparent with the pay-as-you-go model Snowflake has. The data sharing capability made it possible for the near real-time data or nearly live investment data to be made available to data consumers very quickly and easily without moving or copying data. It enables direct, secure, and governed access to ready-to-query, one-click data sets. So especially if their data consumers decided to move on to Snowflake themselves, that one-click operation, it makes that data set appear as a database within their own environment. That's updated in the same frequency that, in this case, State Street would be updating that data. So huge benefits when trying to make investment decisions for their clients. And one of the other big aspects that they point out around Snowflake's multi-cloud strategy, which meant if State Street decided to build a product on Google or Amazon or Microsoft, for example, it'd be very difficult for them to go in and sell that product to one of their customers who was sitting on a different cloud service provider platform. For example, if they built it in Azure Synapse, for example, and they went to their clients, and the clients they were talking to were in an AWS or Google environment, it'd be far harder conversation to have to kind of make that work. But because Snowflake works on all of the main free cloud provider platforms, it doesn't matter at all if they're an AWS shop or they work on GCP or Microsoft Azure. If they're happy to go onto Snowflake, they get a massive amount of benefits as well. If they don't want to go onto Snowflake, then they can just be given a reader account, and then they can go in and extract data as well. But they lose some of that value there because they're physically moving data in that respect. So this is an example how not only Snowflake's massive scalability, but also secure data sharing as well as being on a multi-cloud platform, has allowed someone like State Street to move away from an Oracle-based environment, reduce costs, provide a far better customer experience, and develop a new product and monetize data sets around it on Snowflake's Data Marketplace. That concludes this week's video on data and monetization and my top 3 steps. I hope you find it useful, and don't forget to like and subscribe. New videos coming weekly.